multiple pieces of paper in hand. I'm wondering how many times I'll have to pick it up off the floor. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Good to see all of you all. I think I know most everyone in the room. It's a few I still need to get around to see, but I'd like to begin by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's event, and to our state partners and elected officials for taking the time to be here and share your perspectives. Opportunities like this are important as we continue working together on the issues that impact our community. As most of you are aware, Henry County is in the process of finalizing our budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I'd like to take a few moments to highlight some of the key policies and considerations that are shaping that effort. Like many localities, we're navigating a period where costs continue to rise while expectations for government services remain high. This year's budget reflects an effort to respond to those realities in a way that is both responsible and mindful of the people we serve. One of the most visible changes this year comes from our recent reassessment. Property values have increased significantly, and that is in many ways a positive sign. It reflects growing confidence in our community and progress in our local economy. At the same time, we recognize that higher values also translate into higher tax bills for many of our residents. With that being said, we are lowering the real estate tax rate to help offset the increase in property values while acknowledging that it will not be revenue neutral. It's also important to note that even with this adjustment, Henry County continues to maintain one of the lower real estate tax rates in our region. That has been a priority for the board, and we have worked to balance competitiveness with the need to fund essential services. With that in mind, the board is supporting a couple of other policies intended to provide some measure of relief. We're eliminating the motor vehicle license fee, which has been a long-standing concern for many of our residents and a challenge to administer. Many residents with vehicles valued under $27,000 will likely pay less in personal property taxes this year, and we are expanding tax relief for seniors and individuals with disabilities by increasing the income threshold to $40,000. These are practical steps that we hope will help ease some of the pressure, particularly for those living on fixed incomes. We also look closely at ways we can support long-term growth, particularly when it comes to housing. Like many communities, we're facing challenges with housing supply and affordability. This year, Henry County will be waiving building permit fees for new construction and significant renovation of residential properties. This is not a complete solution, but it's a first step. It is intended to remove one barrier, encourage reinvestment, and signal that we are serious about creating an environment where housing development can move forward. We know this will require a sustained effort, and this is part of a broader conversation that will continue in the years ahead. Public education remains an area where state policy has a direct and meaningful impact on local budgets. Change in the local composite index are shifting more of the financial responsibility to the county at a time when local resources are already under pressure. We understand the purpose behind the index, but it's important to recognize how it affects communities like ours. As property values increase, we are expected to contribute more, even as our population declines and fewer taxpayers are carrying that responsibility. That dynamic creates a challenge that is not always visible on the surface, but one that has real implications for our ability to balance the budget. In addition to that, local governments continue to face growing costs tied to state and federal mandates. Most come with financial and operational impacts that must be managed at the local level. One example that has been part of the recent discussion is collective bargaining. While we understand the intent behind these policies, it is important to recognize that they introduce new layers of complexity, cost, and administrative responsibility for local governments. As these types of policies are considered, it is critical that their long-term impact on local operation and budgets is fully understood. At the same time, we're working to position Henry County for long-term success through economic development. We recently completed the grading of a pad-ready site at Commonwealth Crossing Business Center, which has already been recognized at the national level as a platinum site. We are now beginning preparation work on an additional site at Lot 3, continuing to build on that momentum. We have also been fortunate to welcome companies like Nathan Trotter and FKC America to the Patriot Center Industrial Park. These projects represent significant investment in our community and bring new jobs and opportunities for our residents. They are the results of years of planning, partnership, and a consistent commitment to making Henry County a competitive place to do business. And I'll add a note that's not on my notes here. More to come, even behind this, and I hope that's good news for everyone. As we move forward, continued collaboration between state and local partners will be essential. The decision made at the state level have a direct impact on local governments, and that partnership will play a key role in how we address the challenges ahead. We're committed to doing our part in Henry County, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue to work alongside all of you. I'd like to offer congratulations to Senator Stanley on the successes of items that have moved through the General Assembly. Common sense type items, not reaching for things that are not meaningful to us locally, but the common sense type of thing. Equally as much, I'd like to offer congratulations to Delegate Phillips, who has been named to the Tobacco Revitalization Commission, which is meaningful for us in economic growth and partnership there, as well as being named to the NCI board. Congratulations to you both on your successes during this term.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see each of you here this morning. Thank you to the Chamber for organizing this and bringing everyone together. I have one sheet of paper, so the City of Martinsville began their budget process last night. As we have known for quite some time, the cost of doing business and providing services in the city has not kept up with the inflation rate. So we have a very tight budget this year. We will start our first budget work session tomorrow night, Saturday, next Tuesday, Wednesday. So we have a full plate ahead of us, and the city manager's budget is tight, but we will get through it. We also identified the challenges that the state puts on localities when they don't fully fund their own obligations to the localities. And I know that's something that both the delegate and the senator are aware of, and they don't really have any control over that. That's by the governor's budget. So we applaud them for the service that they do provide to us. In the city, we're trying to keep our education level the same as what it was last year, which puts a burden on the schools because the schools don't have a budget yet and probably won't have a budget for another month or so. So we have a couple of things that we're watching, and one is the minimum wage increase. That will have a significant impact. The city has over 300 employees. And that will have a significant impact on our local government. And the Virginia Paid Family and Medical Leave will also have a significant impact on our city budget. And we just want to thank Senator Stanley and Delegate Phillips for representing us. They had some great things to come through this year, and we are most appreciative of what they have done for our community.
Good morning. I'm Greg Preston, the Executive Director with Piedmont Community Services Board. I also serve on the Chamber Board of Directors as the Vice Chair of Government Affairs. This morning, I've been asked to moderate the panel discussion with our state representatives. Before I begin that process, I would just like to take an opportunity to say thank you to Mr. Adams and also to Ms. Lawson. Likewise, I would like to recognize all elected officials. If you would just raise your hand, please. Thank you for being with us. So joining us today, we have Senator William Bill Stanley, representing the 7th District. We also have Delegate Eric Phillips, that's representing the 48th District. And hopefully soon we'll be joined by Delegate Ren Williams from the 47th District. So this morning we've prepared questions for our state representatives, and we've made the questions available to them this morning. Some brief instructions I have. Each question to the state representatives allows us to, but not exceeding 3 minutes for each of the legislators to respond. Gentlemen, we ask that the 1 minute warning will be indicated when you see the team raise a green card. When you see the team raise the yellow card, you have 30 seconds. When you see them raise the red card, you'll know you have exhausted all your time for responding to the question on the floor. Likewise, for our audience, if you have any questions for our state representatives, you are encouraged to write them on an index card, which is located on your table. At the conclusion of the prepared questions, we will allow time for our state representatives to respond to the audience questions. So, gentlemen, do we have any questions before we get started? 3 minutes, sir. Yeah. Would you like to do a brief? Yes. All right, I'll yield to our representatives. They want to do a brief introduction, starting with Senator Stanley.
I'm going to defer to the senator.
All right, well, I didn't ask for the intro, but ladies and gentlemen, what an honor it is to serve you in the Senate of Virginia. This year has been a particularly difficult year for rural areas and areas like ours and inner cities like Martinsville. I can tell you that we continue to fight the good fight, even though as Republicans we are outgunned and outmanned and outnumbered. We have a 21-19 majority for the Democrats in the Senate, but they treat it like a 70-30 majority. I stood up on the it's on, I just can't speak close to it. I stood up on the floor of the Senate and reconvened, and I told them that they had passed a number of pieces of legislation, both financially impactful and also impactful on our rights and our way of lives, and that they've never come down here, and they've never seen how we live, what our values are, or met our people, or even know our names. And their response, and I said, before you pass legislation that affects us, maybe you should meet us first. And their response was, we don't need to meet you. They said this on the Senate floor. The Democrat Party of Virginia's chairman said on the Senate floor, we don't need to meet you because growing up, I watched the Dukes of Hazzard and the Andy Griffith Show. Now that demonstrates exactly my point. So we have to fight for everything because they want to, like my father used to lovingly say to me, believe that when I want your opinion, I will give it to you. And so what we saw were a fundamental deconstruction of Virginia and changing for special interest rather than the interest of each citizen that lives in this region in Southside and Southwest Virginia. And I know I'm really proud to serve with Eric Phillips, who's a fighter like I am. But we continue to tell them that if they're going to pass legislation like collective bargaining, which we'll talk about, and other things that's going to raise your taxes, and they talk about affordability, and I know one of the questions deals with that hoax that they used as a political statement, that they ought to think about the place that built Virginia, that started the Industrial Revolution, that brought us into the modern era, which was Southside and Southwest Virginia, coal, manufacturing, textile, tobacco. Everything that the government has said is now bad. At the same time, when they say marijuana is now good, I don't get it. But we can't grow it. So I am tired of them dictating policy to us rather than working with us on policy. We are not the same. We are not the same as Northern Virginia, Richmond, Hampton Roads, Portsmouth. And quite frankly, we have the better way. We've got better air, we've got more trees, our people love each other. We work very hard for economic development. We don't have half the problems they have, but they put half the problems that we have on us by their own creation. So what we're going to talk about today, hopefully, is a really honest and open discussion about what's happening, but also what we can do in response. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Delegate Eric Phillips. I represent the 48th District, which of course is Martinsville, Henry County, and the majority of Pittsylvania County. Like Senator Stanley said, you know, it was a difficult session. I've seen a lot of press releases, you know.
Been there since 2006, before I even came there. Also, you know, we're talking about, they proposed 51 different tax increases. Now, those were moved to the side. 51 tax increases, taxing even when you walk your dog, having a dog walker, which were kind of outrageous. But they're going to have to do something to make up that budget deficit. So what are they going to do? Is it skill games, which could bring in $400 million? Can't do that because the governor vetoed that bill. Is it the Northern Virginia Casino? Can't do that because the governor vetoed that bill. So we're at an impasse that I've never seen in my 15 years as your state senator. And I don't see it ending very soon. We have to have a budget for your localities by July 1st. But for us to say we have a strategy, our strategy is to point out every time where they're going to take money from you, they're going to take money from you individually, they're going to put more of a burden on our local governments, which then, of course, takes money from you because you're going to have the taxes raised to balance your budgets because you're getting less from the state because they're paying more for their pet projects. We could go on and on and on about how many things are in the budget that are going to take money from Southside and Southwest Virginia. We have fought at every step. But ultimately, they're going to have to make a deal where they're going to fill a near $1 billion, I'm just going to say $1 billion hole in their budget. And guess what? It's going to come from us. It's going to come from you. All of the taxpayers across the Commonwealth of Virginia are going to pay somehow, and everybody's going to have a reduction in services somehow if they don't raise the taxes to the limit to make up $1 billion. And it's not that easy to make up $1 billion in revenue when you've taken out the one thing that could not only benefit Southside and Southwest Virginia if those counties had the opportunity to choose, but also to get their way in putting it to the data centers that they already benefit from. And I made it in 3 minutes. Thank you. You're clapping for that, aren't you?
Yeah, so, I mean, we need to get the budget finished now. We should have had the budget finished before we left Richmond. I've been there for 3 years, and we haven't had a budget on time yet. You know, one of the things, really, our only responsibility as the legislature in Virginia that we're constitutionally demanded to do is create a budget. And Virginia, unlike Congress, has to, you know, we have to have a balanced budget, and we have to have a budget passed every single year. And somehow we've failed to do our only real responsibility 3 years in a row. And so, you know, it leaves families, local governments, employers, economic deals, they can't plan around uncertainty. Uncertainty is not good for investment. It's not good for any of the things that we want to see positive happen in the Commonwealth. So I do appreciate, unlike my colleagues, branch, the upper chamber, as they call it. It's the one mistake the House of Delegates did was create the Senate. But anyway, I appreciate that Speaker Scott and Chairman Torian have protected the data center sales tax exemption. In our version of the budget, that's really where the fight is. Senator Lucas and the Senate Finance folks want to see that removed. That is terrible for our area. And I had a Cardinal News article here just a few weeks ago with former Delegate Sickles, now Secretary of Finance Sickles, when he and I are on the same side, that this is a terrible idea for Virginia. There are deals that have been made, there has contracts that have been signed that were dependent upon state law staying the same. To his point, 2006, renewed in 2008, and then again renewed in 2010. So it's been good enough for Northern Virginia. It's been good enough for Hampton Roads and Richmond since 2006. But when Southside and Southwest finally get an opportunity to benefit from what we've been helped pay for all these other localities, it's time to take it out. We haven't had data center interest other than Mecklenburg County in this part of the state or in this region. Now we have it all over this region. I have two. I was on the phone yesterday trying to save one that you haven't read about in the newspaper. That's a 9-figure deal. I spent most of the day yesterday talking to different people about this stuff, and it's really maddening when Jim and Kathy talk about local government tax. You know what the number one thing to help the local government is? A data center. They pay more tax than any other business that you can have in your community. And I hear all the negative stuff. Most of those people are uninformed. It's like your cell phone. It gets better every year. It doesn't take all your drinking water. It doesn't raise your electric prices. None of that stuff's true. And I don't have time to defend it all day on the internet, or I'd never get anything else done. But through the machine and tool tax, just in Pennsylvania County alone, that one data center project that you've probably all read and saw about pays over $100 million a year in taxes to the county. That's bigger than their entire budget.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, which deals with cost of living and economic competitiveness. Affordability dominated the session, with policies targeting wages, housing, and consumer cost. How will the phased increase to a $15 minimum wage impact small businesses and regional labor markets? We'll start with Delegate Phillips.
Well, negatively, first of all, I don't know about you, but as I travel around our community, I can't go to Sheetz and become a cashier for $15 an hour. I think they start at $16.50. So the first question is, who's paying minimum wage? I can tell you, I got 100 and some employees. We don't pay anywhere close to minimum wage because you can't get anybody hardly to work for a good wage, much less minimum wage. It's hypocritical. You know who the number one payer of minimum wage is in the Commonwealth of Virginia? The Commonwealth of Virginia. So what happens when the Commonwealth of Virginia's expenses go up? Your taxes go up, and so do mine. I don't know about you. I've made minimum wage when I first started off in life, but I never wanted to stay at minimum wage. It's never been my goal to make the minimum. I've always wanted to make as much as I could, just like the rest of you, I'm sure. So what happens is compression. Obviously, if Bill's got a company and he's got a price of $100 for whatever he's making, and he's paying whoever $15 an hour to be a supervisor, and the people under him make $12.50, well, what happens now? That person makes $15. The manager also makes $15. They're going to say, hey, I'm not happy at $15. I'm not training them because I make the same money as him. So now he's got to pay him $17. Well, now that manager said, hey, I make $17. He used to make $12.50. He makes to pay. I need to make $20. So what happens? Everybody gets a raise, the price goes up, and nothing really changes economically for anybody. Because as prices go up, if wages go up, all you do is you're right back to where you were before. The only people that it hurts is people who don't get a raise. You make less, right? So I just think that the minimum wage thing is really what unions base their arbitration off of. It's not lost on me that a union organizer is who put this bill in this year in the General Assembly, along with collective bargaining, also a union organizer. And so it really has nothing to do with helping anyone. I mean, right now, $15 is not a living wage. You can't live in this economy on $15. But minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. It was meant to be a starting wage. I mean, when I was in high school, I think I was making $4.75 an hour working somewhere. I mean, it wasn't meant for me to stay there, right? And I can tell you, as someone who owns a business, I don't care if you got 10 college degrees or none. If you work hard, you show up in uniform, in a FedEx uniform, because that's what I do, you're going to get a raise, and you're going to keep going and matriculating until you're in management. And I'm paying you $75,000 or $85,000, whatever it is a year, because I need good people. And that economy has not changed. It's hard to find good people, and if you're good people and you work hard and you show up, you're not going to have to worry about making minimum wage.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stanton.
Yeah, I can't say it any better than Delegate Phillips just did, but what I will say is this, kind of the philosophy of it is, when government intercedes in the free markets suffer. And not only do they suffer, they stop being the free market. Quite frankly, as Delegate Phillips said, a lot of what we see when it comes to economic development, when it comes to wage, has been instituted by unions, that they're the ones that make the money off the dues. Now they're trying to get rid of, and they say they're not, right to work, so that they control more and more and more. And that suppresses, in the free markets, those that want to innovate, those that want to grow. Instead, why don't we trust the free market to help us make decisions rather than dominating the free market and, again, telling them, like my father used to lovingly say to me, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. I think this is also a problem when you couple it with the other initiatives that have been passed, the threats to our businesses and bringing businesses into Virginia. Remember, we're like number 3 on CNBC's list of best states to do business. We used to be number 1. We've kind of dropped during Northam. We fought back. Youngkin has done a good job. But guess where we're going to end up when we have that minimum wage as law, but also to the Family Medical Leave Act, which then requires that your employees, if you're at a certain rate, can get 3 months a year. 3 months a year for family medical leave. And that can be their nephew's got a stub toe. And guess who pays it? 80% is paid by the employer. 20% of that fund is paid for by the employee. So the employees that you have that never take it are paying so others may go on vacation or on family medical leave for 3 months. But they think this is great policy because it looks good on a brochure, but in practicality, it does not work at all. Every state, including Maryland, have tried this, have bankrupted the system, which then, just from the collection of fees, which then requires the government to take your tax money to prop it up, to sustain it. It is not good for us. And let me tell you who's exempt from collective bargaining and the Family Medical Leave Act: the state government. Why would they be exempt if it's so great? Because they know it will bankrupt the system. But they're going to put it on our small businesses. So what I'm worried about is the small businesses that are here, that are now laboring under that, the businesses that came here that were incentivized to settle in Henry County, Patrick County, Franklin County, that are now going to have to pay this. Are they going to hire more people, more of our citizens? No. Is there a chance they may close shop and leave? A greater chance indeed. Is there an incentive now to come to the Commonwealth of Virginia? If it's a big business wants to bring 1,000 jobs to Henry County, there is none, because the state has stood in the way of small businesses and the free markets, and it's bad for business and it's bad government. And unfortunately, here it comes. And it's going on their brochures when they all run for Congress with their new districts, but it's not going to help us. And I did it in 3 minutes again. That's a miracle.
Very good. Thank you again. Moving on to the next question, which deals with housing supply and development policy. Housing affordability and supply expansion were major legislative themes. This is a two-part question. First part, what specific tools are being deployed to increase housing supply in small and rural markets?
You take this first.
Secondly, what role should regional partnerships like the Chamber, EDA, PDC play in housing solutions? You got 1.5 minutes.
I was going to say, man, you might have to repeat a
1.5
couple of those
minutes.
questions. That was like
I would
5
be-
questions.
First question.
I'm just going to start where I want to, and you're going to have to guide me as I go, okay?
No problem.
All right.
Start with
So,
Senator
boy,
Stanton.
No, I'm yielding to him. He can take this one first.
So, again, I think, Virginia is a big, diverse state, right? I mean, as to Senator Stanley's point, what they're doing in Fairfax and what we're doing in Martinsville are not really closely aligned, right? I mean, so a lot of the things that we saw that supposedly make housing more affordable had to do with, you know, being able to cut lots up smaller and have more tightly, you know, have accessory dwelling units, things that don't necessarily fit our market, right? And it doesn't mean they're bad things. I voted for some of those things because they are good for those areas and they make sense there. One of the things, piece of legislation that I brought, which was several, and they were all great ideas, we all love our own legislation, was to allow economic development authorities and industrial development authorities to do housing. So in Virginia right now, currently, you know, you can do an 80-20 project as an EDA or an IDA. In other words, you can do housing, but it has to have a 20% commercial component and an 80% housing, right? So like the one we're doing in Martinsville, 51 Lester, with the EDA, that's going to be an 80-20 project. The EDA bought that. We have a developer in there now working. You know, we're still helping get grant money for that project, things like that, but that's an 80-20 project. What this does, and I brought a piece of legislation, it had failed in 2023, so I thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make it smaller instead of statewide. I'll just do the 48th and 49th district as a gesture to my good friend Danny Marshall, who brought this legislation in 2023 when it failed. So Delegate Betsy Carr from the Richmond area, who Olivia used to work for, who's a great, who does a lot of good things and is, you know, very easy to get along with and a wealth of knowledge, been there a long time, was asked to bring the same bill Danny brought for the whole state again by the Builders Association. So she did that. And so what I ended up doing is just scuttling mine and signing on to hers as co-patron, and that bill passed. So something like an EDA now can buy land. The cost of development is really the problem with building houses. I got 4 houses under construction right now. I can build onesie, twosie, threesie. You know, it's hard to go in and build 100 houses because of the cost of water, of sewer, of curb and gutter, of road. It's $1,800 a linear foot to put in a neighborhood road. I mean, it's prohibitively expensive. And so what this does is allow EDAs and IDAs to go to Virginia Housing and get a grant, to go to DHCD and get a grant, to go to the Tobacco Commission and get a grant, to go to all these different places to stack money from the state to incentivize, you know, buying up land, putting in these, dividing lots, and then selling them. I mean, EDAs and IDAs don't necessarily want to be contractors. They don't want to be building houses. What we want to do is get things ready for a contractor. So I think that's going to be a big thing and something I hope to use in Martinsville and maybe even Henry County, Pennsylvania County. And he's going to give me more time because he doesn't want to answer this one. So we got 1,900 homes coming to Axton. You know, that's been out there for a while. I've mentioned it a bunch of times. Let me tell you something. Anytime you bring 1,900 of anything, it's going to take a little while. Right? So we've been going through the sewer studies, the water studies. We got water coming from Henry County. We've got sewer going back to Danville. It's going to be $20 million. They finally finished those studies. We've had to have VDOT studies. We've got to have 2 stoplights. Don't yell at me if they have stoplights on 58. I don't know. It's going to be a lot of traffic. But that's well underway. It's in process. They've done some of their first thing, you know. And so, yeah, I think that we've done some good things. There's a lot more to do. And lastly, I had a rural infrastructure fund that would have given money to localities like ours to put in infrastructure to develop new neighborhoods. Now, they didn't pass mine, but somebody on the other side copied mine, but they didn't call it a rural infrastructure fund because they live in Northern Virginia, but it does the same thing. And it passed, and I voted for it. So a lot of times we give good ideas, they get stolen, and I'm happy to vote for it because at the end of the day, all I want to do is have good things happen.
Very good. Yes, sir.
How can you add to that? I would add this again. When government interferes with the free market under a principle of affordable housing, what it fails to take in consideration is all of the regulations and the regulatory frameworks that restrict housing and that drive the cost of housing up. Not to mention the cost of, you know, the materials, right down to the nail, have gone up enormously since COVID and have not come down precipitously to get us back to those pre-COVID years. But what we've seen again is regulation of stormwater management, regulation of curb and gutter. You can do this, but you can't do that. You got to go through these. And pretty soon it becomes prohibitive for developers to develop. But also, too, it becomes expensive and time. I proposed a bill which was hijacked by the Democrats. They took it, which was to allow for the counties and localities to determine for themselves on ADUs, accessory dwelling units, because a lot of those are Airbnbs. People are building houses for extra income. But also a tiny home development where someone can come in actually and those tiny homes cost $30,000, $40,000. You can put them in a neighborhood, a real nice neighborhood, and you can actually allow a first-time home buyer, a single person, a couple without children, a couple with one child, to start there, because you really have to start at the home buying process at the lower level, build up equity in that, and then when you sell that house, you have equity to where you can go and buy a larger house on the marketplace. That was a decision at the time. It was permissive to the counties. What did the Democrats do this year? They made it mandatory. Now, it's okay with the tiny house part, but the ADUs, again, we're taking away the power of the locality to decide what is best for itself in this marketplace. And quite frankly, when we're talking about housing, they say affordable housing. Well, affordable housing, if it's going to be affordable, ultimately ends up to be subsidized or Section 8 housing, one way or the other, controlled by the government. And that, again, takes away the ability of that homeowner or that person to build equity, to build a life, to then, as they ascend and work hard, to buy that dream home before they're 40 or 50. What we're seeing is young people are not buying homes right now. Why is that? Because the housing prices are too darn high, and they're not going to come down. You've got to give some kind of opening. And we had one good bill that was allowing churches that own property over 5 years, and a lot of them own a lot of developable property, to then develop that property. But again, inside that bill are so many regulations to keep the cost down that ultimately it may frustrate what they're trying to ultimately to do.
Can I add one more thing? I had one other bill. As someone who does build, it's not my main gig, but I love it. It's in my blood. My family's done it for a long time. We have what's called the Uniform Building Code of Virginia. The problem is it's not uniform. It's interpreted differently by every single county, every single city. Some of them give you a really difficult time. Some of them don't. I'll give you one example quickly. I just finished building a house and sold it in Farmingdale. And so we had all that ice and snow and whatever. Well, you can't put a yard down with 3 inches of ice. I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but you can't. And so obviously we're going to put it in before we sell the house, right? So when it's finally done, we put our yard in. If I would have been in Franklin County, I would have to buy a seed bond.
Yep.
In other words, I'd have to spend money to make sure that they know I'm going to. Well, that's not the Uniform Building Code of Virginia. That's been decided by somebody there. So every county, every municipality has different levels of fees, different levels of code. Every building inspector has their pet peeve. And so one of the ways we make it more affordable and easier and more efficient to build is to have what we say we have, which is a uniform code. Of course, we don't like to legislate the building code. I don't want to do that either, but I would like it to be one. And if you have one-offs, you go to your PDCs or you go to your regional areas and you put it in, like Christiansburg, Blacksburg, that area has a lot of radon gas. They should have that in their code. It should be required. We don't have it here because we don't have as much rock in our soil. So there are one-offs that should be there, but we should have as much as possible a uniform code to make it easy, simple to build, and efficient to build.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to move on to workforce and talent pipeline. Economic growth conversations increasingly center on the workforce alignment. How is the state aligning workforce funding with high-demand industries, manufacturing, healthcare, starting with Senator Stanton?
Well, manufacturing, healthcare, those are the essentials here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, in Southside and Southwest Virginia. In healthcare, the average age of a primary care physician is 58 years old, and for everyone that we lose to retirement, we're replace like a half of one. So our numbers are going down. People are having to travel longer distances. I put in bills to allow nurse practitioners independent practice. That now is helping in that region, but we can do more. When it comes to economic development, I'm glad that we're sitting right here in Patrick and Henry Community College. Thank you, President, because this is a shining star of economic development through education, through workforce training. This is the educational hub for Henry County and for Southside and Southwest Virginia because of everything they do. Even the innovative motorsports college that we have, I might be sending my son there to that, is just where we innovate. And if we're allowed to innovate, which it has turned over a lot of that to our community college system, to Go Virginia funding and those kind of programs, then we're going to do well because, again, at the local level, we know what's best. Our community colleges work with our local officials. They say, what do we need? How do we get there? If we got economic development, we're bringing in a large company that's going to require training. Guess who's ready to do it? President Hodges, in a heartbeat. So he should be commended for all of that hard work, because without Patrick and Henry, Lord knows where we'd be. and especially when it comes to economic development. What I think is if we've done one good thing in the government, even up to this, but we've been doing it for a decade or so and more, was to create incentivizations. We do that through the Governor's Opportunity Fund to bring those companies here to allow us to negotiate quietly outside the specter of public view, because then we become competitive with other states once they hear there's a company thinking about coming here. You know, incentivization, unfortunately, is the name of the game. Who brings more to the table to bring that company in? And then have that company promise you 300, 400, 500 jobs over this much time, and you dedicate land in your parks. Industrial parks are great, but having this institution right here so we can create a tech talent pipeline. Now, what we really need to be thinking about is that we start talking to these kids in the 3rd grade. As it has always been my philosophy, how do we break the cycle of poverty? Education broke the cycle of poverty for my father and allowed me to be who I am today. That is the great breaker of poverty, and this is the place to do it. So we need to make sure that we're actually teaching our young children what the opportunities are and how they can accomplish them, because not every child is college ready or has the financial wherewithal or the ability because of their zip code to go to college. For a long time, the government believed that college was the answer. College was the answer. Well, a fine arts degree is not going to get you a job, and it's not going to bring industry into this area. But a degree from this place right here, right now, and Patrick and Henry, is going to bring those jobs, and it's going to, at very minimum, it's going to give those students the ability to go get those jobs. Ultimately, what we're trying to do, because after NAFTA and CAFTA ruined us and taken away tobacco, is we're trying to make sure that our children, as we raise them and they become adults, are good members of our community. Tax earning, earning power brings tax revenue to the state and to the locality, but ultimately, so we're visiting our kids across the street, not across the state or across the country, that we keep our talents here. And that is what's going to bring industry in here, in spite of the state frustrating us at every turn when it comes to this incentivization that we talk about right now. I went over. First time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything the senator said. You know, workforce is the foundation under all of this economic development type activity that we have going on in our area. And we should be aligning the funding from the state with the jobs that actually exist in our region, right? So manufacturing, healthcare, skilled trades, transportation, energy. And I would rather see more investment, honestly, even in partnering with places like NCI, PNH, ILR, all of our regional institutions, DCC's in my district as well, and even employer-led programs, right, where they partner with us and they come in and say, you know, Dr. Hodges or, you know, Joe or Telly or whoever, hey, we've got this manufacturing company, or we've got this data center company. You know, one of the things, I'll just give you a quick example. I believe it's the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, or it's their community college in that area that has a one-of-a-kind training program for people without a college degree to work in a high-tech field for Microsoft there in Mecklenburg County, right? And so they can go in, they go through this program, Microsoft is involved with it, and they graduate out of that with just a high school degree, no other college, whatever, and they're making $75,000 a year in Mecklenburg County right out of the gate, right?
At a data
I mean, at a data center, working for Microsoft with great benefits and 401ks and paid time off and all the things that, you know, when you go to college or when you have any of that, that's what you want, right? And so you're working for, you know, in Mecklenburg, for 20 years, Microsoft has never stopped building. They started and they've never stopped. So it's a business that's going to stay there. It's going to be there. It's changing that region for the better. And to Mr. Adams' points again, I'm going to get on the data center thing again. You know, Mecklenburg just passed the lowest tax rate, property tax rate, and real estate tax rate in the Commonwealth of Virginia. 31 cents. 31 cents. Right? You know why? Because they got Microsoft. And they have a huge amount of revenue coming in. But I think that's how you tie workforce development with economic development in your community, and you match them together. If you have some of these high-tech industries that are coming in, they use union electricians. Listen, I don't care if the IBEW wants to come in and set up a program at NCI or at PNH or wherever it is and train electricians that are going to probably make 6 figures in our community to go work at these facilities, hallelujah, let's do it. I'm all in, right? And we all should be. So I think one of the things we've done a good job in our region, and I'll hush, economically, is we're not just letting anybody in the door. We're not trying to replace a $15 an hour job with a $15 an hour job. We're trying to take our median average income, which is in the 40s, and get it to the 60s and 70s and 80s. Every new economic development economic development thing that I know that's going on in this area has wages in the 60s, 70s, and 80s for the median. And so that's game changing for our area when you look at the cost of living that's going up and you look at how low our base wage is here. So I think we're doing a fairly good job with a lot of this in a lot of areas, but we could always do better.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll take one more question, and then we've got questions from the audience. Last question. Healthcare access and system capacity. How is the state preparing for potential federal Medicaid or ACA changes? Senator Stanton.
Well, first off, I think what you've seen is the Democrats have done a job in terms of trying to get out there that suddenly, by whatever the federal guidelines are, in refining waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid, Medicare program, are going to cost us our small rural hospitals, are going to cost us to have doctors move away. That is not true. I've been in contact with every healthcare system. Healthcare is a part of what I really look at every year to see how we can do it in a better way. Not a single one is affected or will close because of what they're saying might happen from the federal government. So we're not worried about that. But I can tell you this, Greg over there calls me all the time, shows up in my office and totally, this is the first time he's asked questions of me. Usually he's telling me things that I must do. But we need to start from the ground up. We had a cohort that came in for a time where we were trying to educate actually our children at the high school level to become CNAs, to become phlebotomists, to do things that we could probably start them out where ultimately they want to become nurses. In Floyd County, they've got an excellent program that does that takes high school students and turns them into CNAs at the high school level and nurses by the end, and that's an accelerated program. Again, I said earlier, we're losing more primary care physicians and it takes longer to drive to certain places. The opening of the Patrick County Hospital, which I worked on for 10 years, was a miracle because people in Patrick County used to have to drive down the mountain to come here to Sova, or they'd go into North Carolina where there might be an insurance issue. Now we're seeing growth there. We're seeing where we're bringing in some doctors. So what I have done in legislation is I've actually passed a bill that creates a scholarship fund that says if you're a doctor or becoming a doctor, you have to do one residency rotation in an underprivileged, underserved area like ours. We're medically underprivileged and underserved. So now they come down here, and so our hospitals get the opportunity to actually recruit them and show them that maybe they have some debt, but you don't want to live in Northern Virginia. You want to live here in the beautiful confines of South Side and Southwest. It's been working. The other bill that I got passed was to create a fund where we in the state, if they do come, those doctors do come and reside in a underserved area such as ours, for 5 years, we'll pay off through the state their medical school debt. Medical school debt is an average of $120,000 when they come out. We can't compete getting those doctors because the Nova Health systems come up there and go, we're going to give you $180,000, we're going to give you a car, and we're going to help pay off your debt. It's hard to compete, so that's why we've lost out. We're now being more competitive through some of these initiatives that I wrote and have become law. We can be more competitive at the same time, but we have to be better and more efficient at delivering health care in rural areas. And we also have to really focus on bringing our students and making sure they understand not just the nobility of the practice of health care, but also the need, and then keep them here, make them nurses, make them doctors, and then more importantly, make them dentists. Because health care in our region starts at the mouth. Most diseases start at the mouth, so we need to actually be thinking about dentists coming in here because we have a lack of supply of dentists and not the number that we need to continue. And the government's actually paying attention and will continue to, both of us here will continue to pound that drum until we get that problem solved.
I know you're going to ask me another question, but I'm going to add two things in 2 seconds. One of the things we do well here is with Connect Health, and I don't see Marcus here today, but Marcus Stone, bringing in doctors and dentists to our area in Henry County, Martinsville, and Patrick County You know, a lot of the last year VCU dental students come here, go through that program. It gives us dental care, and some of them have stayed. Several of them, one of them has moved to Patrick County and is a provider there now, full time.
We tried to bring a dental school to the NCI, when that was shot down by a local effort. But that would have been a game changer, because right now, VCU's dental school needs to be rebuilt at a cost of $900 million, where we had a building waiting for them. It's a shame.
And then the second thing is, just real quickly, the federal government has done one thing to try to help with some of the worries, and it's a rural health care fund. I don't see if Dale Wagner's still here or not, but Henry County's former lobbyist, Heidi Hertz, is now in charge of this rural health care fund for the state of Virginia. It's $190 million a year per year for the next 5 years. She's already reached out. I don't know if, I'm sure she's called the senator, she's called me. We've got her interested in coming down to our area to see what initiatives they can invest some of that $190 million into.
So I've asked Delta Phillips if he could just touch on the business climate and regulatory environment, and also infrastructure, energy, and data.
So I'm gonna be really quick. I'm gonna give you the top three. We've talked about a couple of them. Minimum wage, FMLA. Not only is FMLA, I'm an employer, and so it affects anybody with 10 or more employees, right? And as you heard the senator say, it's gonna cost me 80% of that. Where does that come from? I mean, I don't know any of the rest of you where you work, if it's just a fountain that just runs money day and night. It doesn't work like that, right? I'm in a contractual situation with FedEx Corporation. You think I'm gonna call them and tell them suddenly, hey, we changed the law here in Virginia, can y'all give me some more money? I don't think that's probably gonna fall on deaf ears, right? So where do I find that money? I guess I'll have to figure it out.
When
right?
you can't fire the person, that takes the medical leave, and then you hire somebody to replace them. What do you do at that point? It's costing you double, right?
And that's the other thing. There's no cap. So there's no cap on it at the state level, so it can go up and up and up and up and up, right? And then the employee also has to pay 20% of it. So I'm just gonna tell you, when they say there's no new taxes, that's a lie. If it's on my pay stub and it comes out of my check, I call it a tax. I don't know where y'all come from, but where I come from, if you're taking it out of my check and it's the government doing it, that's a tax. So 20% of that's gonna be paid by the employee, 80% of it's gonna be paid by business owners, right? It's terrible, no cap, it's gonna be a problem. We'll end up having to fix it or do something about it in a few years, or we'll raise all y'all's taxes to pay for it. One of those three things. Collective bargaining is terrible for local governments. Listen, we want our teachers, our firefighters, our first responders, our policemen to make us absolutely as much money as they can, and I mean that sincerely. That's one of the reasons I vote for the budget, because it has them in there and it usually gives them a raise. But who ultimately pays for that? When you collective bargain, Henry County, Martinsville, they don't have a collective bargaining attorney on staff. That's not something they're used to doing. They're not union attorneys that they have at the municipal level. So they're gonna have to go outside and spend millions of dollars on that. Then they're gonna be stuck in long-term, 3-year deals usually, that they have to, it goes up and up and up, more benefits, more time off, more money. Somebody pays for that, and they look like you and me. And it's just it's an untenable situation, particularly for rural counties and rural small towns and things like that. Because if you had, let's just say back in the good old days when Dan River Mills was humming along, if Danville at that time was under collective bargaining and they shut down, or Toltecs in Martinsville, and thousands of employees leave, either, how do you suddenly pay for that when you are in a contract that says you have to maintain this? You can't just fire them. Right? So what happens in situations like that? I guess we'll find out, because they've hoisted it upon us. I think those three things are terrible for business, and I think they're going to hurt Virginia.
Very good.
When it comes to energy, we don't have enough of it. We don't have enough of it, and we've done that to ourselves.
Well,
Virginia has an go ahead.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but here's the fraud that we're seeing right now. The Northern Virginia is complaining about data centers, and this is why. Because they understand, with all these data centers in the Commonwealth of Virginia, there is no way that we can comply with the requirements of the Virginia Clean Economy Act and go green energy. There's no way that windmills and solar panels are gonna energize and feed the electricity to these entities called data centers. And they're in this problem. That's why they're ultimately, by taking away the tax break, they're trying to kill it up even in their area, because they make other tax money and that way, and not keep giving us this. They can't have it both ways, ultimately, is what I mean. They can't have a data center bringing in a ton of revenue for the locality and then provide electricity to those data centers with solar panels and windmills and cow farts.
Well, on that note, so, I mean, he's right. Like, so, you know, I did a floor speech this year. I don't get up and speak all the time on the floor, but I did one on energy as I was driving back to Richmond and when we had that ice storm. And, you know, Pennsylvania County has more solar farms actually built. There's other places that have more white paper, but they haven't been built. But actually on the ground, taking up good old farmland, Pennsylvania County is #1 in the state, and they're not proud of that. They hate it. So I'm driving through Climax. I'm sure you guys have been through there. Looks like you're on the moon now. There's 1,850 acres, and I'll tell you a funny story about me and my big mouth in Richmond with that guy sitting on my couch in my office, and I'm talking bad about solar, and I didn't realize that was his old farm. But anyway, 1,850 acres of this stuff. I'm driving back to Richmond, and you know what that solar farm? It was frozen. It had ice on it. Let me tell you something. You can't get sun through the ice. Not only was it not producing any energy, what most people don't understand is it was actually using energy for inversion power to try to melt the ice off of them. Yep. So during a time when we're talking about having rolling brownouts and blackouts, we've got solar out there using power. It's not putting anything back on the grid. You've got 1,850 acres out there, and it's white papered at 23 megawatts. That's nothing. Give me one combined cycle natural gas plant anywhere in this area, and it can produce 3 gigawatts. Yep. Right? It's a joke. You have to suspend your intelligence in some of these conversations because it's not serious, and they know it. That's why they're running transmission lines from Pennsylvania and Maryland and West Virginia into Loudoun County so they can buy power for them because Virginia won't let us generate it. Right. Maybe we should do that with North Carolina down here.
And solar has a 25% efficiency rate, which means it's 75% inefficient because it's not sunny every day. And on top of that, windmills are even worse. So it really is not efficient. But again, let the free market determine. We will get there, but don't force it on us because your power bills are going up because they're forcing on it because they feel good. The Northern Virginia Democrats that are elected that serve in the House and Senate, they go home in their Prius every night and they plug it in. And when they go to bed, they pray that the electric genie puts in only the solar power from your county and not that dirty coal or natural gas power. That's how they live. That's how they justify. And that's their mindset of how we should be in the future without collaboration, just forcing this on us.
Birgit, we have a few questions from the audience.
I got one too.
Number one, what is your opinion of the extraordinary pay increase for Virginia legislators per government?
I'll start that. It's ridiculous what they're doing. But again, we voted against it. Every single Republican voted against it, and every single Democrat voted for it. That's why we have special sessions that go on for 612 days. They love playing legislator. They want to be like Washington, D.C. They want to be full-time doing nothing. And so it is a 300% increase. Now they say, well, that just brings us up to where we should be. No, it doesn't. This is a part-time job that is a full-time job. You don't do it for the money. You do it because you're representing your area and you feel like you can make a difference. They get free health care, Cadillac health care to begin with, now over $50,000 plus they get a per diem every day. You're talking about probably about $65,000, $70,000, and they don't have to work in another job where we go home and go to work and catch up on the work we missed because we're spending our time and our efforts and our energy in Northern Virginia. It's the most ridiculous thing, and I think it indicates that's your money. It indicates where their mindset is. My mindset and Eric's mindset is about where we live. Their mindset is about them, and that's really unfortunate. And because remember, they come from affluent areas. Eric touched on this. Our average per capita income is $39,000 to $41,000, depending on the region. The state average is $70,000. The Northern Virginia average is $131,000 per year for a family of 4. So it's a drop in the bucket. But they want this to be their full-time job. We fight against it. If you start loving this job and wanting it as your career, then you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, so to Bill's point, you know, one of the things you can do with the budget is when the budget comes out, you can pull, you know, amendments to the budget out and vote against them or vote for them. That's one of the amendments we pulled out. I voted against it. I knew it was $17,000 a year when I got involved. I mean, you know, that it's certainly, Danny Marshall would always say the only people in Virginia not making minimum wage are people that work in the House or the Senate. Because we work a whole lot more hours than $17,000 a year. However, we all knew what it was when we signed up for it. And if you're doing it for the money, you're really doing it. You're doing. I could do just about anything in life and make more than $17,000 a year, right? So if you're doing it for the money, you got into it for the wrong reason. I was happy to vote against it. I'd vote against it again today. And you know, so I mean, it is what it is. I guess we'll all get it because it's in the budget, or I think it'll be in the budget, and they all voted for it. But yeah, I think it sends the wrong message at the wrong time to the Commonwealth and to Virginians when people are struggling to make ends meet. We've talked about affordability, and at the same time, you know, we're giving ourselves a 300% raise. I just think it's the wrong time, the wrong thing to do. But here we are.
Very good. Next question. How can state organizations absorb minimum wage increases?
By raising your taxes.
State organizations?
Well,
they're
the
not
state-
subjected to it.
Well, the state's not, but localities are. The state government exempted themselves.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about it.
They've exempted themselves from the Family Medical Leave Act, from collective bargaining, because they knew it would bankrupt the Commonwealth of Virginia at the state level. I mean, it's good for thee, but not for me, is the wrong way to govern. And so we made a big fuss about that on the floor, that they carve out all these exemptions, and when they put these taxes and these requirements on us, whether it's minimum wage or Family Medical Leave Act or collective bargaining, but then they exempt the state from it. Now, what does that tell you?
And again, the state is the #1 payer of minimum wage in the Commonwealth, is the Commonwealth. So,
All right, last question. How much did each locality pay for our special election?
I'd be glad to defer to our local officials.
Oh, well, I know that just from the state level, that they passed an emergency budget for $4 million.
Yeah.
That was just on the caboose bill. What they're anticipating is at least another $4 million or more on the past budget to finish up what the ultimate costs were. But it was thousands and thousands of dollars for every locality, I'm sure, for a glamour shot election that allows 5 Democrats from Fairfax to run for office, have a brochure, see who's more liberal than the other, and ultimately to serve in Congress because they want to. And oh, by the way, that pays $150,000 in the medical, and it's great. Oh, 170, I didn't even know that. They went up. So again, and then to tell us in our one district what we should be doing with our lives and our way of life and our traditions. So
That's if it holds.
it's millions and millions of dollars for a vanity project that quite frankly violates the Constitution. I am a plaintiff in the case that just was heard before the Virginia Supreme Court and got the first injunction. I am hopeful. You know, I was a little upset because as a lawyer I wanted to argue the case, but they say the plaintiff can't argue the case. So I didn't get to do that, but I'm hopeful, especially with what the Supreme Court did yesterday in denying Jay Jones's emergency petition to lift the stay on certifying the election. If the election was certified, he knew he wins the case. He moots out any arguments. They did not do that, which demonstrates, at least to me, that they're not going to let the outcome of the election determine the outcome of their decision based on constitutional principles. But even looking at the election, it demonstrates we're a 6-5 state, and we should be left that way.
You know, I do think, just to your point really quickly, that there is a huge rising cost for the localities. Back to Jim, Chairman Adams' point, sorry for calling you Jim. Chairman Adams' point is that, you know, there are a lot of unfunded mandates to localities now that they keep having to find money for that are unforeseen. And it seems like we've had a lot of special elections in our area. You know, we've had, well, Les Adams stepped down and triggered a special election for me. That was a cost, right, that they weren't prepared for. Secondly, 45 days of early voting is just very, very, very expensive for the localities across the Commonwealth. It's millions and millions of dollars. I don't necessarily have a problem with giving people more than 1 day to vote, but I think most people universally think 45 days is probably just a little too long. I can tell you, when you go into these registrar's office, whether the Democrat member or the Republican member, they say, Eric, you got to do something about this 45 days early voting. We haven't had hardly anybody on that, you know. Now, as you get closer, it gets busier, right? So whether it's 2 weeks or whatever that number may be that's a sweet spot, but 45 days is just too long. And guess what? You got to pay those folks in there whether anybody shows up or not, and it's just too much on the locality.
Very good. So we're at the end. This concludes our panel discussion. Thank you to our legislators for a focused and informative discussion this morning. Let's give them a round of applause. We covered a lot of ground this morning, from the state budget and workforce priorities for housing, health care, and the overall business climate. And it's clear these issues will require ongoing collaboration beyond the legislation session. To our business community, your engagement is essential. The insights and challenges you share help shape more informed and effective policy decisions. And if I may, I just wanted to just take some time and say on behalf of Piedmont Community Services Board, just wanted to extend a thank you for your support over the years. I truly appreciate that.
Especially me.
When's the last time you toured?
Oh, dude, I win every year.
When's the last
He
year?
comes and visits me every year.
All right. I went last year.
Oh, that's your first time?
Likewise,
Yeah, okay.
I wanted to also say thank you to the chamber, to our board of directors, to our chairman, Andrew Palmer, to our president, Pernell Tabitha. Thank you all for all that you do. We truly appreciate everyone's time and participation today, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue in months ahead. At this time, I invite Ms. Amanda Cox, CPEG board of directors member, to come and offer closing remarks. Yes,
So really quickly, is this working? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Really quickly, on behalf of Appalachian Power, very happy to sponsor this and all of the legislative events that the Martinsville-Henry County Chamber puts on. Being involved in our service territory is important. We are only as strong as our communities are. So we put our very best foot forward in working with stakeholders. I look at the economic development work, the education, working with local nonprofits to try to help our customers that are most in need. And really happy to do that. It's what we should be doing. Want to thank Senator Stanley and Delegate Phillips. You got a glimpse, right? You got an hour or so of what they're doing every year. They work really hard, tirelessly on your behalf. They have a lot of conversations about what we've just talked about here today. And not only are they working really hard in Richmond and Stanley giving lots of floor speeches and talking about rural Virginia, they're also in the district. They also show up, and they are very visible, and they are open and willing and accessible to talk to anyone that needs their help. So thank you very much for what you do for your constituents, your communities, these types of organizations. And thank you all for coming. And Brunel has asked me to request that all board members of CPEG or Chamber take a photo with our elected officials. So if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium before you leave.
Thank you, Anna, for the kind words. Thank you. Very nice of you. Mostly.
We don't agree on everything.
No.